Hello and welcome to a very special episode of Knives. Today we're going to cover sharpening knives, which is a popular viewer request. So, I've got a bunch of knife sharpening implements here. So the first step is going to be, go out and buy all of these. No, we're just going to have you, I'm going to cover all these and then you can decide what's best for you. So, the thing that most people already have is this, and this is called a honing steel. So what does a honing steel do? So what happens when you have your knife, when you start out with a nice point, is when you start using that, the point is going to flop over to one side like this. And all that honing does is to push it back straight again. So it's going to feel dull, but actually it's still got the point on it, so we just need to flop that back. That is going to be more common in typically European style knives or stainless steel in particular. Stainless steel is softer than high carbon steel, which will hold an edge better but more prone to rusting or chipping. So stainless steel is just softer, so it'll flop over more. So how would you use one of these, or how do you know when you need to use one of these? So the way that you can tell if it needs to be honed is to not go this way, but push away and push along that blade, and you can feel one side will feel perfectly smooth and the other side will feel rough. The side that's rough is the side that it's flopped over on, and the smooth side is the one where it's flopped away from you. So the way to get that honed is you take this device, you don't hold it up in the air like this, you put it vertically on the board and you make you go downward and away from you at an angle of usually 20 degrees for a European style knife, or 15 for a Asian style. So you go there, you would go at an angle, you would alternate, and you would go along the length going away from you. So if that's not enough, this thing is never going to sharpen your knife. It's not going to take off any metal from your knife. It's going to just get it back to center. So if that's not enough, you need to sharpen it. This right here is the easiest to use and cheapest sharpening device. This cost about $5 to $9 and it's called an AccuSharp brand sharpener. The way that you use this is really easy. It's got a little metal V made out of hard carbon steel, and you would take your knife and you would lightly drag this along there. You'll start to feel bits of metal coming off, and when you don't feel those coming off anymore, you'll stop. The next step up from that, this would be about $20 or $30. This is a multi-stage sharpener. So this one, you would start out with a coarser grain when it's more dull and move your way to a finer grain. And here you're just, again, pulling the knife through. So this one just adds more levels to it, maybe gets a little finer. And then the next step up from there is an electric sharpener. This particular one is going to be the most foolproof and easy to use, but most expensive. This is about $150. This Chef's brand is the top end of electric sharpeners. This particular one takes it to a 15-degree angle. So when I got this, I took all my 20-degree European knives and I converted them to 15 degrees. This one has 3 stages, some have 2. And all you're going to do here is you would pull it through these stages. This one's only if it's really dull, or if you're grinding it to 15 degrees like I did. So this one has a disc that spins around, it's vertical. You would do this to sharpen one side, and then you'd pull it in on the left side to sharpen the right side. So you would just make several passes, and that's going to give it that edge that kind of flops over because of the angles. And when you feel that nice flopped over edge on there, you move to the next stage. And then the third stage actually is for honing and stropping. So that's going to be not even a gritty disc. It's going to be a little more leathery. And that's going to get you to that nice center position. So a more low-tech and cheaper solution, which has some other advantage, is called whetstones. These go for about $20 to $30. These come in a variety of grits. These ones I have 2 grits on each, on either side, and they go from 600 to 6,000. So if your knife is rough, you would start on a grittier side. So the way these work, and the benefit of these, is that you can go at any angle. So 20, 15, or like I have a knife that has different angles on each side. It's an asymmetric bevel. Or I have like a pocket knife where maybe I can start out with this one because it's 20 degrees, and then I want to get a finer edge on it, so I use these whetstones. So the way you would use these, you would soak this in water for about 5 minutes, and then you would keep it wet while you're using it. And you would just make a long motion like this, keeping it in contact with the stone the entire time. And notice this isn't going to get all the way to the edge, but the way we would get the edge is we would keep it at the same angle here, and we would make that same motion, and we would hold it at an angle. It'll actually make contact with the whole curve, believe it or not. And we would do that, keeping contact with the stone the whole time. So we start with whatever, a rougher one, and we work our way up to 6,000. If you were to do that, you would find that this gives you an extremely sharp blade. And this is more favorable for a higher carbon steel because the honing won't really work on those. It's not going to get that flopped over edge on higher carbon. So there's one last thing we can do. This is an extra fancy sharpening device. You'll know when you see it how fancy it is. Look at that thing. What is it? This is stropping leather. This is 2 pieces of leather which I have glued to a board. The board is just there to keep them flat and to make it portable. But you could just get a piece of rectangular leather and put it on a table or whatever. So what this does, you know, an old-timey barber would use this for a straight razor. And what this does is it puts a microscopic, kind of a fine burr on it, which looks kind of like little hairs or something. And that gives it a little more bite to the edge of it. And the way we would use this, if you want, you can use, this is called polishing compound. It has a very fine grit to it, and you would color that on there. That will give you a little bit more of a grittiness to this, so it'll take off a little more metal. Or you can just use it like this on the rough side. And rather than going back and forth and flopping it over, which will curve the end of it, which we don't want, we would go in one direction. And we would push it in one direction about maybe 10 times. The angle on this isn't quite as important as just contacting the edge. So we go maybe about 10 times in one direction. Then we go about 10 times in the other direction. And then we would reduce that. So maybe we go 8 times, then 8, and on down to where we just make one pass, and then one pass in the other direction. And that'll give you a crazy sharp razor edge. So that's going to be used, again, on probably more your higher carbon steel. You would use a solution like using whetstones and stropping leather if you want to take it to the next level. On your softer steels, those you can use your honing steel to maintain the edge, to keep that edge pointing up. And then you could use a variety of sharpening devices on either of these that have the angles in them already. So that is how to sharpen knives. If you got any questions, let me know. Otherwise, next week we'll get back to cutting up fruits and vegetables. All right, I'll talk to you later.